Bad news, the fantasy football season is over. The good news, that means it is draft season. That's right. All the way from now until the start of this year's fantasy football season, we will be doing mock drafts, bringing you rankings, how we evaluate players. But today, I'm going to break down a mock draft, a way too early, although I don't think it's way too early, but a lot of people think it's way too early, 2025 mock draft for a PPR redraft league. I'm going to go through rounds 1 to 3 and break down exactly how I would draft these players if I was on the clock at every single position. Now, if you see my predicting the first round video, you probably already know how I have the first round, but in case you haven't, let's go through it again. And I'm going to start at the 101 with Ja'Marr Chase. This guy was unbelievable this year as a wide receiver, especially in PPR leagues. Gave you so many massive ceiling games. I just think Ja'Marr Chase has to be the number one pick in PPR formats this year, probably in half PPR as well. I do like some running backs that we'll see here. And of course, there is risk because the 101 has been cursed for many years now, but you got to take that risk with Ja'Marr Chase at the 101. Now at the 102, I'm going to go with another wide receiver, and that is Justin Jefferson. Did kind of slow down a little bit down the stretch as Sam Darnold struggled in the big games, but for most of the season, this guy was also incredible. And it's either going to be Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy next year. And at this point, does it even really matter who the quarterback is? I think Justin Jefferson is as close to quarterback proof as we've seen in the NFL. So Justin Jefferson in a PPR league, I'm going to have him at number 2. Now at number 3, just behind him, not too far behind him, I will go with Bijan Robinson. Just ahead of Saquon Barkley, who we're going to see next. And I could see an argument to put Bijan ahead of Justin Jefferson. This guy was unbelievable last year, and it's like no one noticed because of what Saquon and Derrick Henry and these other guys did, but 15 touchdowns, over 1,500 yards, caught a ton of passes. In PPR leagues, he's a monster. That's why I have him at 3, just ahead of Saquon Barkley, who sleeper ADP, as you can see. Oh, let's type him in. Sleeper ADP, not the best here. I got Saquon at 4. Obviously, an unbelievable season for Saquon. Over 2,000 yards. Probably would have broke the rushing record if they let him. And we didn't have to worry about all the touchdowns, right? That was the worry here. Like, oh, Jalen Hurts going to take all the touchdowns. That wasn't an issue as well. My issue, though, is just had a 2,000-yard rushing season. How often do guys have a 2,000-yard rushing season and then back that up with another unbelievable season? But he's in this Eagles offense, behind what is still one of the best offensive lines in football. I got to have him here at 4. Right behind him at 5, I am going to go with CeeDee Lamb. Again, down the stretch, he wasn't like a monster or anything down the stretch, but he was still pretty good, even with Cooper Rush. Gave you an extremely high floor every single week. Dak Prescott is going to be there, and they promoted OC Brian Schottenheimer to head coach. Maybe he's not the best head coach candidate, but he's the OC. He knows the system. He knows the players. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a monster in PPR leagues, assuming he and Dak stays healthy. Now at number 6, I am going with Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown, another guy who was absolutely great this year. No, he didn't live up to my expectations of being the overall wide receiver 1 like I thought, but he was still fantastic for your fantasy teams. And yeah, I know Ben Johnson is gone, but I don't think Ben Johnson made Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's going to be totally fine here in your PPR leagues. He's going to be fantastic. And then right behind him at number 7, another wide receiver, and that is going to be Puka Nacua of the Rams. Now, I know there is some talk that maybe Stafford will retire. Maybe they won't bring Stafford back. But whoever the quarterback is, Puka is going to be the guy in this offense, in this Sean McVay offense. You want the wide receiver 1 in this offense. That is Puka Nacua. Now, right behind him, going back to running back, a guy who won everybody their fantasy championships this year, Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I know I'm a lot lower than most people on Jahmyr Gibbs. Most people have him in the top 5, in the top 3. But remember, what he did down the stretch was either without David Montgomery or with a very limited David Montgomery in that divisional round game. David Montgomery is under contract with the Lions. He should be fully healthy to start the season. Jahmyr Gibbs is a monster. Jahmyr Gibbs is great. I still have him as a top 3 running back here. But I think David Montgomery just caps his ceiling enough to keep him out of the top 5 picks. And then right behind him, I'm going with a guy that many people are going to be scared to draft this year, and that is Christian McCaffrey. This is a guy we know when he is fully healthy is one of the best, if not the best running backs in the NFL. I'm going to take a chance on that. I can't have him too low. Even coming off that lost year last year, If he stays fully healthy for all 17, he has a chance to be the number one scoring running back, really the number one scoring player in all of fantasy. Now at number 10, I'm going to go back to wide receiver with last year rookie Malik Nabers. Had a very nice year, even with terrible quarterback play. We know it's going to be a different quarterback in New York, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's a free agent, whoever it is, it's going to be an upgrade for Nabers. And unlike some of the other rookie wide receivers, the Giants smartly funneled the offense through him. He's going to get a ton of targets. In fact, he was second in targets as a rookie. The floor is insanely high. The ceiling could also be high this year. Then another wide receiver at 11, and that is going to be Nico Collins. Was mostly fantastic this year when he was healthy, when he was on the field. And you look at this Texans offense going into next year. Let's see. Stephon Diggs, old and coming off ACL and not even under contract. Tank Dell may not even play in 2025. It's going to be the Nico Collins show like it was in the playoffs. It's going to be that way almost all season long. And if the Texans do bolster that offensive line and help CJ Stroud's protection, Nico Collins could be set for a huge year. So I'm going to have him at number 11. And then rounding out my top 12 is going to be Devon Achane. Again, another running back. I could see having him a little bit higher here. He's kind of a tough one, but you look at him when the games with Tua, 22.6 PPR points per game, only behind Saquon Barkley. Now, the games without Tua, he wasn't very good, but we got to bet on Tua staying healthy or being healthy most of the season. So I think Achane has the kind of upside I'm looking for, that overall RB1 potential at the end of the first round. Now, at the start of round 2, I'm going to go with another rookie wide receiver. I should say second-year wide receiver now, not a rookie anymore. That is Brian Thomas of Jacksonville. It didn't matter if it was Trevor Lawrence. Didn't matter if it was Mac Jones. This guy was a stud. Now getting a coaching upgrade here. And he's competing with what? Christian Kirk, Evan Engram. I mean, there's really no competition here. He was great as a rookie. Why can't he be even better in year 2? And then right behind him, I'm going back to running back. Derrick Henry, I don't care. I don't care how old this guy is. I don't care how much wear and tear this guy has. He looked great this year. He's in this Baltimore offense. This is one of the best offenses for a running back. He's got touchdown upside every single week, 100-yard upside every single week. Derrick Henry is a unicorn. We can't worry about the age. I can't drop him lower than this. Now, right behind him, another wide receiver that I feel like is not getting the respect he deserves after the season he just had. That is Terry McLaurin. Had a great year. We finally saw the ceiling for Terry McLaurin with Jaden Daniels. Still only going to be 30 years old. I know that's not like a spring chicken, but it's fine for wide receivers. He looked great. He didn't show any signs of slowing down throughout that playoff run. Why can't Terry McLaurin be a beast again in 2025 with Jaden Daniels going into year 2? I'm going to take him early in the second if I can. And now another running back that was fantastic last year. Another running back that switched teams and was just awesome. Josh Jacobs with the Packers. Again, the offense ran through Josh Jacobs. We know LaFleur, the head coach there, wants to run the football. He's got massive touchdown upside. This is where I'd be comfortable taking Josh Jacobs. And then right behind him, I'm going to go with another young wide receiver who, again, I don't feel like is getting a lot of hype. That is Drake London. Look, even for Kirk Cousins struggling for a lot of the year, he was still putting up solid games. And then we saw with rookie Michael Penix Jr. put up monster games. Now they're going to have an entire offseason together, learn the playbook, learn each other, build that chemistry. I think Drake London is going to have a fantastic year this year, so I'll take him in the second round. Now let's go on a mini running back run here, starting with Jonathan Taylor. Still one of the best running backs in the NFL. Still had many fantastic games. Was a monster in the fantasy playoffs. Whether it's Anthony Richardson, whether they bring in somebody else, move on, whatever, I don't think it matters. Jonathan Taylor is a stud running back, and he's got the kind of upside I'm looking for. And then right behind him, I'm going to go with another stud running back who's a workhorse running back in his offense. That is Kyren Williams. This guy is the guy, and they're talking about extending him this season. He is the workhorse running back in this Rams offense. And again, whether it's Stafford or another quarterback, doesn't matter. They got Sean McVay. That's what matters. And then right behind him, the final running back on this run will be a guy who was drafted top 5 last year. That is Breece Hall. I can't drop him too low because he's still young. He's still a dynamic player. We got to think, or at least we got to hope, Aaron Rodgers is gone. Devontae Adams is gone. They'll turn to their young players like Breece Hall, like Garrett Wilson, and be the focal point of the offense. So there's some risk here, of course, but I can't drop Breece Hall too low. Now let's go a couple veteran wide receivers. Well, Mike Evans is definitely a veteran wide receiver, but it doesn't even seem to matter. right? He's kind of like the Derrick Henry of wide receivers. You know you're going to get 1,000+ yards. You're probably going to get 10+ touchdowns. I mean, he went over 1,000 yards despite missing 4 games. Had he not missed those 4 games, he would have easily gone over 10 touchdowns. Chris Godwin coming off a serious injury. Maybe Jalen McMillan, asserts himself as a 2. Even with Liam Cohen gone, it doesn't matter. They'll bring it. I remember after Dave Canales left, people were worried about the offense. This offense will be fine, whoever they bring in. Mike Evans will continue to be a stud. And then another player who was, routinely like a first-round pick in like drafts for years and years, A.J. Brown. I'm dropping him down here, not because he down the stretch and through most of the playoffs, he didn't have huge fantasy games necessarily, but the real worry here, the thing that I think has made the biggest difference is Saquon Barkley. They now have a running game. Before, the running game was just Jalen Hurts, so they had to rely on the passing game more. That's not the case. They can just rely on the defense and say, hey, Saquon, carry us to the finish line. So that does cap A.J. Brown's ceiling a little bit. But still, he's an elite player in elite offense. I'm going to keep him in the second round. And then I talked about Breece Hall. What about Garrett Wilson? Another guy who basically been a first rounder the last 2 years and has not paid off. Again, going to bank on the fact that Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, these guys are out of here. And the Jets are going to turn to guys like Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, and say, hey, you are our offense now. You are our future. I'm going to bet on that. Of course, if that doesn't happen, if they bring those guys back, okay, I'll drop Wilson lower than this, but this is still a talented wide receiver with a ton of upside. If the Jets do the right thing and go to the youth movement, he could be a monster this year. And now right at the end of the third round here, I'm going to go with running back James Cook. Another guy I feel like isn't getting a lot of hype despite how good he was this year. Again, another guy where the worry is like, well, Josh Allen takes all the touchdowns, and then all he did was go out there and score a bazillion touchdowns. When you're in good offenses like this, there's a lot of touchdowns for a lot of different guys. James Cook is an explosive runner, a good pass catcher in one of the best offenses. I'll put him here. And then right behind him, I have another young running back, a second-year running back, and that is Bucky Irving. Was phenomenal down the stretch for the Buccaneers. I don't see why that would change. I think in 2025, we're going to see Bucky Irving as the main guy here. Yeah, Rachaad White will get sprinkled in, but that's pretty much it. It's going to be Bucky Irving getting 60% of the opportunities in this offense. He's a great runner. He's an explosive runner. He's a great pass catcher. He can do it all. So this is where I'm comfortable with Bucky Irving. And then I do have to probably put Joe Mixon here. Joe Mixon's tough because he did fade down the stretch, as we often see these older running backs do. But at the same time, he's the workhorse running back in this Houston offense. And if the Texans do upgrade the offensive line, that'll be good for him. So I don't think I can drop Mixon lower than this. All right, let's finally get to tight ends. I know a lot of people are going to have the tight ends round 2, maybe even round 1. I can't do it, but this is where I will finally feel comfortable taking guys like Brock Bowers, and also right behind him, I'd be comfortable taking guys like Trey McBride. These were the guys, especially in PPR leagues, that were your no doubt studs, week in, out tight ends that you could rely on, high floors with good ceilings. So if I get to this point and I do want to go tight end early, this is where I'm finally comfortable taking them. I don't think I'm going to be comfortable taking them early second like they're going to go in a lot of drafts, but if I'm in a league where they fall here, I'll go for it. And then another second-year wide receiver that I love going into 2025. I loved going into 2024 too, honestly. Go back, watch a lot of our off-season videos, or if you followed us in the off-season, talked up Ladd McConkey all off-season long. He did not disappoint. Looked great. He's going to be the alpha wide receiver in this offense. I doubt they're going to do anything at the wide receiver position. They have other needs, especially on defense, on offensive line, maybe even at running back. We'll see. So Ladd McConkey, I think, once again, will be a beast. And then T. Higgins, when he was on the field this year, he was a beast. Now, there is some uncertainty, of course, like where is T. Higgins going to play? Is he going to be back with the Bengals? Is he going to go somewhere else? I feel like he's going to be back with the Bengals, but I don't think it matters because if he goes somewhere else, he's probably going to be the alpha wide receiver there. So unless he goes somewhere terrible with a terrible QB, okay, fine, I'll drop him down. But as of right now, I'm going to assume he's going to be back with the Bengals in that same role. There were weeks where he was better than Ja'Marr Chase, so this might even be a little too low for T. Higgins, but I like some of these other guys a little bit more. And then another young wide receiver, a year 3 wide receiver that we saw break out. It took a little while last year. It didn't look like it was going to happen, but Jackson Smith-Njigba eventually did break out in the second half of the season, was phenomenal down the stretch, took over the wide receiver 1 role in Seattle. My only worry about him in this offense is Mike Macdonald, the head coach, fired the OC Ryan Grubb, of course, saying we want to run the ball more. Maybe they're a more conservative, run-heavy offense, but at the same time, any wide receiver 1, JSN, getting those kind of targets, it's going to be good for fantasy. I think middle of third round is fair. And then now, here's where I'm finally going to be comfortable taking those quarterbacks. And I'm going to say guys like Josh Allen, who's right there, and Lamar Jackson. I'm just going to have these guys back to back. Again, I know in some leagues, these guys are going to go much earlier, and I understand why, because they give you such a massive ceiling every single week with the fact that they could, throw for 2 touchdowns and run for 2 touchdowns. But also, I don't feel like I have to take quarterback early. There's going to be plenty of guys late. Every year there's plenty of guys late you can just get. So if I get here and they're still on the board, sure, I'll do it. But most of the time, I'm going to be passing on early QB. But this is probably where they should be ranked. All right, now let's go back to wide receiver. Chicago Bears wide receiver, DJ Moore. It's pretty funny because a couple years ago, I was like all about DJ Moore when he first went to Chicago, and he was great. And then last year, I was like, I have my doubts. I have my doubts with Caleb Williams, and it was rough. But I'm feeling great about this Bears offense now. Of course, they brought in Ben Johnson. That is huge for the offense. You know the priority is going to be offensive line. Keenan Allen, probably not going to be back with the team. Maybe, but probably not. DJ Moore going to be the alpha wide receiver, still only 28 years old. Caleb Williams going into year 2 with Ben Johnson. Sky's the limit for DJ Moore. And then right behind him, I am going to go to a guy who was very frustrating if you drafted him. Marvin Harrison Jr. did not pan out as a rookie. He was okay, did not live up to expectations, but this guy is still uber talented. He's still the wide receiver 1. He's in a good offense. Kyler Murray is a good quarterback despite all the hate he gets. I gotta think Marvin Harrison is much, much better in year 2. I can't drop him out of the 3rd round. And then finally, I'm going to end with one more quarterback, and that is Jayden Daniels. Maybe the draft pick of the year in fantasy because he was going as one of the last quarterbacks drafted and ended up being one of the best quarterbacks and literally won you a fantasy championship. Why would anything change? He gives you the rushing upside. He's a great passer. We know he can get it done. Big games, doesn't matter. This guy can get it done. So if I miss out on Lamar or Josh Allen, JD is the guy I want. So there you go. That's how I feel like the first 3 rounds should break out. Now I want to talk about some guys that didn't quite make the cut and how I feel about them. Let's start with Tyreek Hill, a guy who's been a consensus first rounder, and now I don't even have him in the top 3 rounds. Tyreek Hill is a tough one. Was he banged up last year? Has he just lost a step? I don't know. I don't think I would have him too far out of the 3rd round, like probably early 4th, right around here. I'd probably have to gamble on him, but there certainly is risk. Then another tight end, George Kittle. A lot of people are going to say, how can you not have George Kittle in here? He was awesome. He was just as good as like McBride and Bowers. Yes, he was. But that was a perfect storm of things. I mean, Brandon Ayuk basically barely played and then got, tore his ACL and missed the game. Debo looked like dust. I mean, CMC was gone the whole season. They really needed Kittle, especially around the goal line, around the red zone. Scored a ton of touchdowns. I worry if we see Kittle go back to more of what we saw the previous years where, yes, he would have a few huge games, but he would also have a lot of duds. So that's why I'm just not going to take him this early. Basically, my thought at tight end is going to be, if I get Bowers and McBride, great. If not, I'm just going to wait. And then a lot of people are going to ask about running back Chase Brown. This guy is the workhorse running back and one of the best offenses, getting every single touch. You're right, but I have my worries that, is he going to be that again, or are the Bengals going to do something at running back? This is a great running back class. It's a deep running back class. Maybe they draft one of these guys in the 2nd round who maybe isn't going to take Chase Brown's job outright, but is going to take significant touches from him to lower his upside. Now, if that doesn't happen, if we get through free agency in the draft and it's still Chase Brown and Zach Moss, yeah, I'll put him back in the top 36. But right now, I'm a little worried for that. And same thing with rookie Ashton Giante. I see a lot of people already ranking this guy, high 2nd round, 3rd round, maybe even 1st round. Let's see where this guy ends up first, right? If he ends up in like a no doubt workhorse landing spot, yeah, he's going to be here. Maybe even in the 1st round, definitely 2nd round. But if he goes somewhere where there's already an established veteran and he may get slow played in, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be comfortable taking him in the top 36. So we'll have to see with him. So there you go. There's my top 36. Let me know, who did I miss? Who would you have in? Who would you take out? Who am I too high on? Who am I too low on? Let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to keep it here all off season long. We're going to be dropping videos like this all off season. But in the meantime, if you want to see some players we secretly love in 2025, you can find out who they are right here.